Welcome to the Podcasting Secret Show, where successful creators share their best stories, secrets, and strategies. I'm your host, Nathan Gwilliam. Give us an example of a powerful story that you helped a company to develop.
Yeah. So now this is, I want everybody to lean in because this is the secret. We're really breaking things down here. This is actually a secret. Most people, when they think of stories, what they think of, or the powerful stories, are the stories that make you laugh or the stories that make you cry, right? They're that thing that connects to us emotionally. The reality is, the way that the science works, the most powerful stories are actually the stories that make the most sense to us. Now, sometimes they can be stories that make us cry or make us laugh, but that's not actually the power of story. The power of story is in simplicity and clarity. There is actually a formula to how you should tell stories. And this is really all based on how the brain works. This goes all the way back to Aristotle and Plato. They were the ones who really initially started the study of story. And they said, even way back in poetics, they would say the best way, if you want to change people's minds, if you want to influence culture, the way to do it is through story. Now, here's what we need to understand as communicators. Again, business leaders, thought leaders, people who are like even in the podcast space, we are competing against a lot of noise that's out there, right? Depending on the research that you read, the average person receives between 3,000 and 5,000 commercial messages a day.
Oh my goodness.
We're also making about 35,000 decisions in a single day. I mean, every microsecond, we're actually making decisions, and most of it is from our subconscious. So we have all this noise that's coming at us. Now, our brains are really designed to keep us alive. Like our brains, do a lot of physical function, but our brains are designed to keep us alive. And there's two ways our brain really, really focuses on keep us alive. The first thing is that our brain is always looking for information that contributes to our survival and thriving. So we are scanning our environment and only really subconsciously paying attention to the things that help us survive and thrive. So for instance, if everybody listening, if we were all in a stadium right now, I could get up on a stage and I could say, how many people here know how many chairs are in this stadium? And nobody would raise their hand. I could say, how many lights are in the stadium? Nobody would raise their hand. If I said, how many people know where the exits are? Every single person would raise their hand because that's what their brain did when it came in. They're like, I don't need to know how many chairs are here. I need to know where the exits are. The other thing our brain is trying to do is actually conserve calories. What I mean by that is that at any given moment, our brain actually has a limited number of calories that it is dedicating towards thought and thinking and processing information. The more we have to think, the more diminishes. And it kind of goes up and down all day long. And when we're tired, when you're exhausted, when you're daydreaming, that's actually your brain replenishing those calories. So what our brain does then is says, if the information that I'm receiving is too complicated, that's going to cause me to burn too many calories. So I need to stop paying attention. And if I can't figure out very quickly how what I'm being told or what I'm reading contributes to my survival and thriving, then my brain also is designed to tune out. What that means for us as communicators and people who are telling stories is, if we are not communicating in such a way that actually shows how what we're offering people contributes to their survival and thriving, and we don't do it in a way that causes them to have to not burn any calories, their brain is actually designed to tune us out. So we as communicators, as podcasters, as businesses have to figure out how to break through that noise. The most powerful way to break through that noise is through story. So I say all that to set it up of like, why is this so important? When I'm talking about story, I'm not just talking about being entertaining. I'm not just talking about owning a room like what my dad did. What I'm talking about is how do we get our information through this sea of noise to people in a way that shows them that by working with us, listening to us, buying our products and services, subscribing to our podcast, that we communicate in such a way that they see us as helping them survive and thrive. So the way you do that, like I said, is through story. Now, story is formulaic. There are really 7 elements to every good story. Every story should follow this formula. I might ruin movies for you here real quick because you'll see how every movie works like this. In a movie, you immediately start out with a main character who wants something. That's story element number 1. The main character has to want something, and that something has to be very clear. If it's not clear, we're out. We don't pay attention. The second thing that happens in a story is that character has to encounter a problem. The problem is the hook of the story. If there's no problem in a story, if the main character is just walking around a park all day smiling, that's not a good story. We're not going to pay attention to that. But if a meteor is going to destroy the Earth, now we pay attention. Are they going to stop the meteor? So element 1, the main character has to want something. Element 2, the main character has to encounter a problem. Element 3 is that main character then meets a guide, somebody who's going to help them overcome the problem.
Oh, this is the hero's journey.
It is. And the guide is typically Yoda, Gandalf, right? It's somebody, Mary Poppins even, somebody who's coming alongside to help the hero win. Then the hero gives the guide gives the hero a plan. The 4th element is there's always a plan. You'll see that in almost every movie where they say, here's the plan, or what's the plan? Then there's a moment. The 5th element is the hero must be called to action. And then the final 2 elements is there has to be stakes in the story. So we have to be rooting for a happy ending, success, or know what kind of pain they're trying to avoid, which is failure. Those are the 7 elements that make up a good story. A hero who wants something, who encounters a problem, who meets a guide, who gives them a plan, that calls them to action, that results in success or failure. Now, why that is the formula is because that's kind of been the way that story formula has been refined over the years to directly connect with audiences.
What are some of the most important things that a podcaster or an author needs to do to set it up differently so that it can be a business and not just a hobby?
Very first thing is to think about your audience. Who do you want to attract with your audience? And a bit like how blogging used to be, some podcasts are kind of all over the place. So the listeners don't know what they're getting. And what you want with a podcast is the repeated experience of coming to the show. So people listening to this, you're part of their repeated experience, but also you have a framework for the show. You have a very clear audience, people who want to podcast or do podcasts. So I'm the same on the Creative Penn podcast. When I started in 2009, I was a new writer, and all I've done for 14 plus years is share the journey of my life as a writer, and then interviewing other people who are also writers, authors. And so and I wanted to attract the same people like me who wanted to write books. That's all it's ever been. So if you are the person you're also attracting, that helps. But then in terms of setting it up as a business, you do have to think about the multiple streams of income. So when I started out, I didn't have that. And it got to the point of, I have to make some money with this, or it is just a big time suck. And so that's when I implemented, I had advertisers, so corporate advertisers. I still have them. They're people I work with, companies I work with. So they're all vetted, absolutely. My reputation is super important. But then also I have Patreon. So, people who pay a little bit extra every month in order to get extra content, extra bonus episodes, that kind of thing. Those are my 2 major ones. And then, of course, marketing my own books, which are my products, marketing courses, affiliate income, that kind of thing. So there's a way to turn a podcast into a moneymaker, but you certainly need that audience first. And that's why you have to think about that at the beginning, and then just make sure your show becomes like a habit, and people want that repeatable experience. I mean, obviously it's new every week, but it's a repeatable experience.
This analogy you've given of this wheel and spoke model, can you expand on how Disney does it? And then, how a business can do that with books and podcasts and these other things you've mentioned.
Yeah. And I also think that there's an opportunity clearly for individuals that are not even raising angel funding or venture funding to start off with some element of content creation and get sponsors, to, make more money doing this than they did working at the New York Times or whatever. And they have the independence of like the Uber driver, but they could be in Thailand one day and skiing in some amazing place the next day in the Andes, right?
Yep.
So I think it's worth thinking about that. So the Disney spoke and wheel model is like if you get an MBA, you'll be forced to read a Harvard Business School case on this kind of stuff. And there's others that have tried to replicate it, but Disney's the most famous. So Disney was, Walt Disney himself like made Mickey Mouse as content, right? And so you've got the cartoon and even kind of like the comic strip, but the cartoon itself is like one form of content. So that's one spoke. And you could say all the movies, even down to they've acquired Star Wars, probably killed it, but it's not totally dead yet. So you have these movies that are like, Snow White or whatever, and the dwarfs. And then they make an amusement park where you physically go there, like it's Great Adventure with a roller coaster, and you can get on the Snow White ride or, the Jungle River ride or whatever that stuff is. And so bringing your family to the ride reinforces the interest in them buying what was the DVD, that the evil company of Disney would only make the DVD available between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And they promise you're not going to get it for the next 4 years when your little princess daughter is too old to give a damn other than she hates you for not having bought her the princess whatever thing. So the amusement park absolutely reinforces the DVD sales, or, pay to rent it on Amazon now is where we are now with that. And so content drives that. And then there's the merchandise that the merchandise gets you to buy this little Yoda hoodie. And now the little kid identifies that he's wearing Yoda every day. So he wants to go to the Universal Star Wars fun park in Orlando. And he's pumped to be watching the movies and paying money for it. And so these different spokes of like merchandise, the movies, the content, the little TV offshoot, and the amusement park ride creates a wheel that starts to roll with thunderous momentum that is a monster that cannot be stopped.
What is it that you love? What is it that's driving you?
I love how intimate podcasting is. You are with your audience, right? I mean, versus video, right? Video is fine. We do video because we know YouTube matters. But video, to me, you're a more distracted listener. You have other videos flashing in front of your face, other options. It's very visual, but it's similar to reading a book with podcasting. People can kind of invent the characters in their mind, what they look like, what the scenarios are that they're describing. So it allows for a little bit of imagination, which I think is kind of cool. And there's a real intimacy. I mean, I get emails from listeners saying, oh, I listen to you every morning on my way to work. It gets me energized. And to be able to play that role in someone's life is a profound privilege. So I love podcasting as an art itself. So that's where it starts. To go for 12 years, you have to truly love the art.
Can you give us some specific tips about how we can bring more connection into our podcast?
Well, yeah, for sure. So you mean with your audience, how you can connect with it? Oh, well, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that we love to do. I am always obsessed with my listeners when I'm recording the show. So I'm often like kind of referring to what our listeners have told us, inserting things like, I've heard from our listeners that this can be a challenge. I know you face this challenge. I faced this challenge when I was learning Spanish. We also call out listeners' names. Whenever we see a new review, whether it's in our app or in our podcast, we actually call out their names, not their review. It's not about the number of stars. It's about they took the time to go and leave a review. So we call that out. We also bring student questions onto the show, and we enjoy talking to that listener, therefore speaking to all the listeners, because many of them have the same question. So those are some things that we've done over the years. I'm sure there's more, but it's very important to be connected to your audience. Every episode is about them. You don't waste a single second indulging in your own, just chatting about your day. We don't do that anymore on podcasting. It's 2025. There's no time for that, right? 100% value all the time. Bring them into what you believe in. And if they believe in that too, they'll buy in to the show and they'll enjoy it. It'll mean a lot to them.
Yeah. Okay. So it's about creating connections with our audiences, but this human connection thing was also something that really differentiated you from the other podcasts in your niche. How do other podcasters find these differentiators, these things that really set us apart and propel us to greatness?
I really think it comes back to thinking about your life story a little bit, the experiences you've had, thinking about what really jolted you or jarred you, what really affected you, and then coming back to, I guess, human needs, right? Is it the need to achieve, the need to connect, the need to have love? What are these basic human needs that humans have had for centuries and they always will, as long as human beings are around? And then see if you can find the way those come together so that you're never just talking about yourself, right? When I share my campfire story, I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about every single one of my listeners. Just this morning, Nathan, I was on a presentation, a professional English summit, and I told that story. And I knew that this was not about me. I spent the first 15 minutes on that campfire story, but it was about them. So I then went out to the audience in the Zoom room and I said, how many of you have had this situation? Flood of yeses. Yes, it happened to me at work in a meeting. Yes, it happened here. Yes, yes, yes. You get me. So we want to find that piece. And honestly, it takes reflection. I also think it takes publishing.
Get real listeners that'll know you, like you, and trust you. Come back. Yeah. So what advice do you have for those people? What have you found that does work to grow an audience?
The biggest thing, when I talked to a lot of the big shows about what did they do to grow, a lot of them said nothing. And they said they let their audience do it. So what I found to help grow is interacting with your audience, making your audience part of the show, having them send you feedback, and getting that feedback out of them is tough. A lot of times, a lot of people would say, oh, I would use listener feedback every episode if I had any. But you have to just constantly be on your audience saying, hey, send me in feedback, send me in questions, send me in audio file. I have 206-666-4357. That was 206 mom help. I tell people call in and leave me some voicemail and I'll use it on the show. Really, I say reaching out to your audience and asking them to participate in your show, because once they do, then they are part of your show, and then they become advocates and acolytes for your show. And they tell their friends about how smart you are for having them on your show. And they start really promoting your show out there more so. If you get 100 people listening to your show, promoting your show, they're going to do a much better job in aggregate than you can as a single person.
Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is brought to you by Pod Allies, the done-for-you podcasting services solution. When I speak with CEOs about their podcast, one of the most common comments that I hear is that they know they need a podcast, but they don't have time. Have you ever wondered how some businesses find a way to still run their podcasts while juggling their crazy day-to-day operations? The secret might be simpler than you think. Let me introduce you to Pod Allies. This is a service that's changed the game for businesses in the podcasting world. Pod Allies is a done-for-you podcast production and marketing service. They understand that while many businesses understand the immense value podcasting can have for their business, finding time to produce, syndicate, promote, and monetize a show can be challenging. Pod Allies offers a dedicated team to handle virtually all aspects of your podcast production. From strategy and branding to audio and video editing and guest scheduling, they've got you covered. They even take care of creating blog posts, transcripts, and syndicating your content across multiple platforms. What sets Pod Allies apart is their use of PodUp, their proprietary podcasting software suite. This allows them to streamline the entire podcasting process, saving you time, effort, and a bunch of money. If you're ready to become a thought leader, connect with your audience, and grow your business through podcasting without all of the investment of time and cost of doing it yourself, Pod Allies might be the perfect solution for you. To learn more or to schedule a free consultation with a podcast expert, visit podallies.com. That's podallies.com. Now back to the show.
I'm going to say, watch what other people are doing and copy it.
Yeah, successful people. Find the people that have already arrived where you want to go and then copy it. Is that cheating to copy what someone else is doing?
No, I mean,
No, it's not
that way. But let me be honest with you. Once you study what the greats do, they all follow very much the same blueprint, right? And so, of course, in the beginning, it's going to feel very unnatural because you're feeling like you are copying. Now, don't copy word for word what they're saying, because that is plagiarism, right? We learned that early on in school. You have to take it, incorporate it,
Put it in your own words,
into
make it
word.
work for your audience. Yeah.
Until you find your voice, until you find your style. And that's what it is. It's funny that you brought that up, because I was just watching a Dan Martell video, and he's huge right now. And he was in one of his caption, or the video I clicked was 0 to 3 million followers in 18 months. And one of the first thing he says is that he scrolls TikTok, which I was surprised. And he goes, and I'm watching the people, like the trends and what they're doing. And then I'm researching, duplicating, and that's what it is.
Yep. Yeah, you see lots of people say it in different words, but they're teaching the same thing. Like Russell Brunson, he's another one that I love.
Yeah.
And he calls it funnel hacking, right?
Okay.
So basically you find another funnel that's working really well and is really successful, and then you create a version of that. When I did my MBA, they called it R&D, rip off and design, right? Find another business that does it really well, and then you design it to work for you, right? It's a really good formula to get unstuck. Who's doing it well? What's my biggest problem? What's the biggest thing I need to achieve to be successful, to take that next step? Okay, who's doing it well? Okay, learn everything I can about them, and now modify it to work for me.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly right. And it's just hard because I know it sounds like it's cheating, but it's not. It's really not.
It's not.
There's nothing in this world that is really new. It is literally a variation of knowledge and books that have been around forever, right? And I'm not saying I'm a big reader, but a lot of these success books, they all start to sound the same, right? And that's because they are. They just add and tweak, and maybe the way that this author had written it might resonate with you more. And that's what podcasting, and that is what social media really is. You're not going to appeal to everybody. You're going to find your tribe, and you're going to find your vibe. That's it. Or you're going to find your vibe that then attracts your tribe.
So there's these growth strategies that aren't working, that are a waste of time. What growth strategies should we be focusing on? Which ones are going to give us the good return on our time?
You've got to get outside of your network. I think the thing, if you have budget for it, and you might have to grow into this, right? So hire people who are getting started out. Hiring college kids, I think, is smart. I think college kids, either in or just out of college, but PR, just you have to do PR. You have to become known. You have to be, if you're going to work hard, you're going to pay someone on the small scale at first. We're talking several $100s a month. You have to buy ads. Get over yourself. This is not about, look, if you're in this for business and everything else, businesses invest in themselves. So you have to invest in ad buys. You have to invest in PR. If you do that, and you are going to fail along the way as you do this, you're going to trust the wrong person. You're going to find someone who doesn't quite know how to work with your brand. You're going to do that. So understand that there's going to be trial and error. But if you find the right people and you get each other and they get you on the Today Show, it changes the game completely. All this stuff about whatever YouTube or whatever it is, you get on Brene Brown's show one time and Brene Brown is a person in your space, forget it. It's over. Like you do that once, get on another show adjacent to that. It changes everything in an instant. And yes, that costs money, but that's how you drive revenue. You have to build the machine as you're in flight, though, so that you can be ready to withstand what the public is going to want from you from that. So you're ready to deliver the product that you want to deliver too. I'm not saying you jump right into Brene Brown right away, because it's not about ego, it's about business. So when you get on Brene Brown's show, do you have that book that's ready to sell? Do you have that project that's ready to drive revenue so that you don't waste that opportunity? So you have to do all of these things simultaneously. But I'm telling you right now, PR is the way to go.
Talk about some different ways that podcasters can stand out to brands and sponsors. Let's just start off with the basics. What is a podcast sponsorship? What does that entail?
So podcast sponsorships is when you are partnering with a brand to promote their offerings, whether that is a product or a service or an experience. And there are lots of different ways to go about executing and using marketing. But primarily as podcasters, a lot of us will think of a few separate ways, including ads on podcasts, whether that's a pre-roll, a mid-roll, post-roll. But there's also many other things that you can add onto sponsorships as well that encompass your entire brand. But overall, you are helping a brand promote their product, service, or experience and introducing your audience to that brand. And you're getting a payment for that partnership and that mention.
So what do brands really care about when they enter into these sponsorships? What are they really looking for from the podcasters?
I think a lot of podcasters assume that they are going to care a lot about download numbers. And I will say downloads is not irrelevant. It is relevant. But before you even get there, I believe that podcast sponsors really care about your synergy, meaning are your listeners aligned with their target audience, who they want to get in front of and who they want to be customers. So that is very important, that synergy. So important. That actually would be the first thing that a brand will typically be looking for. Secondly, your reach. That's going to be things like downloads, your page views on your website, your follower count, engagement. Those numbers and those stats, you cannot escape it. They're going to ask for it. So you want to be able to provide that. And then I would say the secret sauce is past partnerships. Especially with audio, there are a lot of brands who have not advertised on podcasts yet. They have never worked with a podcaster. And it's very difficult to imagine what that can look like, even though we've all heard of radio ads, for example. We know what it is, but a lot of times brands just are having a difficult time understanding the ROI. So it's really important for podcasters to have a body of work or portfolio, like I call it, and that can showcase the different campaigns you've done with other brands. Imagine you are talking to a brand and you have nothing to showcase. It's going to be a lot harder to convince them to work with you than if you say, hey, I worked with your other competitors in your industry or other related brands. So once they start to see who you've worked with and what those campaigns look like and sound like, and also what was the result of those campaigns, it's a lot easier to sell yourself and to really showcase the value of working with you. At the end of the day, a podcast sponsorship is really a brand investing their marketing dollars in you and in you as a marketing channel.
Let's talk about the whys for a second. Why are some people not adopting this convergence with video and audio? And why should we? What are the biggest benefits that should be driving us in this direction?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, actually, because I think as a content creator and as a person that's thinking about getting involved in creating online content, I think you do need to think about what your passion is and what you want to do, right, is a big part of this, right? Especially if you're just getting started. Video can be a challenging medium, right? Many people feel like that they have to build up to that. And then there's other people that are very talented on video, right, that can just jump right in. And so we've kind of seen this approach, and you can clearly see it in YouTube, is that there's very talented people on YouTube that are just so good on camera, and they just have natural talent in that way that they tend to just gravitate towards that and do that only. And oftentimes they don't think about just putting out an audio version of it because they built such a following in YouTube and that's working for them. But then there's other people that feel, shy or don't want to put their face out on video and don't feel confident in that maybe they feel more confident in just doing audio to get started, right? Or to do audio because they feel like they can create the best kind of content because they can do post-production editing more and things like that. Because editing video can be a little more challenging, and it also can be punishing in the consumption experience if you do too much editing, right? But in audio, you can do as much editing as you want, right? So it's all about how you want to create content, what you feel comfortable doing, and what your topic is, and what's the demographic breakdown of what that content is. YouTube consumption tends to be younger, though I think it's moving a little older. And podcasting is tending to be the fastest growing age demographic is young people. 16 to 24 is the fastest growing consumption demographic for podcasts. And radio obviously tends to be a lot older. So you have that demographic piece of it too, but we're not really talking about radio, but radio is an interesting contrast to what's happening in podcasting right now, and why we're seeing a lot of people moving away from radio, going towards more on-demand and podcasting experiences. So it really gets back to what you want to do. What are your passions? What are your goals? What do you feel comfortable with? What do you have knowledge of already? And then build up to these different strategies, right? So this convergence strategy is probably the best way to go if you know how to do it and you feel confident and have the time to do it. Because it is a time commitment to do both of these things and to do them well. But it can be very effective, and some of the very largest content creators and some of the most successful ones do a convergence strategy and have been doing it for many years.
I've heard a couple of really big successes from you. One of your greatest successes has been this amazing amount of reach, right? 18 million downloads. So you could say, what is the most important thing that's contributed to those 18 million downloads? Another thing could be, another measurement of your success would be the minds, the opinions that you've changed, the points of view that you've been able to change through this education you've provided. And so what was the greatest thing that helped you to do that?
Yeah. And I guess, maybe what I would say is that I have kind of stumbled into a way of working that involves asking really big questions about big things, right? Like racism seems to be a perennial issue in this country, in this world. We can't seem to get past it. And so to ask in a way, I'm not going to say that nobody's ever asked this question before, but to come at it in a way that say the typical journalist, and I've spent many years as more or less the typical journalist, where we would be covering a story about some racial controversy in some city or whatever. But this is on a whole different scale, where it's like, what's the whole story behind this whole thing, right? Who invented racism? And actually to try to answer that question. And actually there is an answer to that question in a way. You can make a case actually for naming a person, a Portuguese man 550 years ago who invented race as we know it. It's probably a little bit of maybe a little unfair to pin it on one person. But anyway, the point being to have this sort of the audacity to ask a question like that, and then to go as honestly as possible into an exploration to try to answer it, and then to bring it forward, and so that you can just try it for yourself first of all, but then for the audience that comes along, to try to understand something that you didn't understand before, in a way that you didn't understand it. That's pretty fun and pretty satisfying.
I love that. So to summarize that all up for other podcasters, have the audacity to ask the big questions, and then take the time to explore those and learn the answers in a new way. So learn something you've never learned before, and see something differently you've never seen before. Am I saying that right?
That I like it, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be the big questions, right? It could be, given, say, if you're doing a podcast about some broad subject matter, it doesn't have to be like ask some huge question like, how did we get racism in the world? But it could be a smaller question, but maybe one that hasn't been asked, or you haven't heard it asked or explored engagingly, and that maybe there's an answer that if you don't know it, probably most of your listeners don't either. And maybe if you can go find an answer, or even just an exploration that's going to shed some new kind of light on it. I mean, I guess that is what I will say, is that I happen to be a person who loves to learn. And I know so many of us do. And that's what attracts me to podcasting as a listener as well. I want to listen to a podcast where I'm likely going to either hear some piece of history or some story that I didn't know about. I'm going to learn something about the world and the way it works that I didn't know before. That's what I'm attracted to. And so that's the kind of podcast I want to make as well.